There are many who believe that the peace we see may be just a prelude. Think about the impact of the Abraham Accords, an ambitious and in many ways surprising political movement. Apparently, it is the solution to one of the biggest conflicts in modern history. But is it really that simple? Aren't these steps toward peace actually a way of preparing the ground for something much more complex? Something that involves not just politics, but also the fulfillment of ancient prophecies? I know this idea may seem controversial, even disturbing, and that's exactly what makes you unable to ignore this possibility. Everything seems to be connecting, the pieces are falling into place, and the figure of Kushner emerges with his characteristics as a diplomatic strategist, navigating difficult waters, gaining the trust of many and paving the way. Could he be the one mentioned? The one who will bring fleeting peace before the storm? These are difficult questions, and that's exactly what we're going to delve into now. So come with me as we reveal the details that could completely change the way you see the current scenario. There's something big happening, and Jared Kushner, Donald Trump's son-in-law, is in the middle of it. A recent letter from Israel practically calls for his influence, stating that he is essential to maintaining alliances that promise to transform the Middle East. But for those who follow biblical prophecies, it's hard not to raise an eyebrow. Kushner, with his decisive role in the Abraham Accords, is seen by some as a facilitator of peace, but others wonder if he is, in fact, an important player in the Antichrist's plans. After all, the Bible has already warned us about leaders who would bring false peace, deceiving the nations. These Abraham Accords, which he helped establish, are seen by many as an attempt to join forces in the Middle East, promoting a coexistence that seemed impossible. However, the prophecies speak of a time when a leader would rise, preaching peace, but with hidden intentions. Are we facing this figure? Kushner, with his connections and influence, fits many of the descriptions that some find alarming. For some, he may be the symbol of hope, but for others, he is the one who prepares the way for the Antichrist, as already written in the scriptures. This letter from Israel asking for Kushner's action only reinforces this aura of mystery around him. It's not just about politics or strategic alliances. For many, it is a sign of the times we are living in, a warning that ancient prophecies may be about to be fulfilled. The question is, are we ready for what may come next? First of all, allow me to contextualize who Jared Kushner is. Jared Kushner, a real estate mogul, has deep ties to the Middle East. But there is a very curious detail about it. Its corporate headquarters are located in a building marked with the number 666 on Fifth Avenue. Coincidence? Or is there something more? After all, the number 666 is closely linked to the symbolism of the Antichrist, and this makes us question the invisible paths that history is taking. In addition, the building houses several technology companies, some of them involved in telecommunications, financial services, and biochip advances, technologies that many believe can be used to implement global control of a system led by the Antichrist. Could this be the beginning of the scenario that the biblical prophecies announce? What about the speculation about Jared Kushner being a possible candidate for the Antichrist figure? I'm not saying this is true, but there are facts that we can't just ignore. Kushner is Jewish, respected in Israel and practicing Judaism, which aligns with the idea that the Antichrist would be a trustworthy figure in Jewish circles. There are even rumors that he is a descendant of the tribe of David. And the name Jared itself refers to one of Enoch's ancestors, meaning the descendant, a connection that, even subtle, is still intriguing. For those who follow Daniel's prophecies and dispensational studies, this peace agreement brokered by Kushner brings with it a disturbing suspicion. According to these studies, the 70th week of Daniel begins with a pact between Israel and its enemies, a treaty that, when broken, will mark the beginning of the Great Tribulation and reveal the true identity of the Antichrist. Could we be seeing the beginning of a sequence of apocalyptic events? Of course, this may all seem like just speculation, but there's something fascinating about the way the pieces fit together in this puzzle. The scriptures warn us, Do not despise prophecies. Examine everything. Hold fast to what is good. 1 Thessalonians 5:20-21. This moment is an invitation to reflect on the signs around us and remember that, for those who are in Christ, there is no condemnation. Rom 8:1. Are we watching the first acts of a much greater drama, already foreshadowed millennia ago, unfold? Stay with us, as this is just the beginning of a discussion that could change the way we see the world around us. The Middle East is an eternal theater of tension, and Jared Kushner finds himself right at the center of this complex and unpredictable board. Imagine trying to keep a flame burning in the middle of a sandstorm. Any stronger breeze could put out the fire. Such is Kushner's role in trying to strengthen Israel's position as the winds of change blow from all sides. The alliances he seeks to forge with Arab nations are like a thin spider's web, where any false step could unravel years of effort. It's not just about diplomacy, it's almost a dance with danger, where one wrong move can trigger an avalanche. The Abraham Accords are like a faint hope in the midst of chaos, but they are also a bitter reminder of how fleeting and uncertain peace in the region is. Kushner achieved a feat that many considered impossible, bringing Arab nations and Israel closer to a minimally peaceful coexistence. Yet each signature on these agreements seems filled with a certain regret, as if everyone knows that at any moment stability could crumble. The question is, how much longer can this artificial peace last? We are perhaps facing a bubble about to burst, a calm that precedes a new storm. The Arab countries that approached Israel did so for pragmatic reasons, but the reality is that the past of conflict cannot be erased easily. Kushner knows this, which is why his actions resemble a kind of mountain climbing without a safety rope. Any mistake could be fatal. The fate of the Middle East hangs in the balance, and any change in the delicate balance of power could bring back the chaos that, for now, seems only dormant. Will Kushner's hand be steady enough to hold this thread, or are we all just waiting for the moment when it snaps? Tension is in the air, and everything seems to indicate that new challenges are approaching. He is deeply involved in the Abraham Accords, a pact that has attempted to bring some stability to the region. Imagine how a simple agreement can transform tense relationships into something more cooperative. It is not an easy task, but Kushner's involvement shows a strong commitment by the U.S. government to seek, if not peace, at least a strategic balance. These political movements have left many keeping an eye on what could happen. After all, the Abraham Accords are just the beginning of a long and winding road. Kushner, by being part of this complex political tapestry, also ends up representing Israel's interests. Many critics wonder whether this will only benefit Israel, or whether there will be a broader impact on global geopolitics. Jared Kushner seems to walk a tightrope between being the peacemaker and one of those responsible for influencing the direction of the entire region. Now think about it. When we talk about the role of the United States in the Middle East, we are not just talking about diplomacy, but about power and influence. And how much of this is a game of interests between historical allies and new partners? Kushner appears to be playing this chess with great skill, but there are always risks and challenges in every move. It remains up in the air what will come next, especially with the changes in regional power dynamics and the constant fluctuation of the U.S. role there. When I began discussing biblical prophecies, one thing became clear to me. Understanding what the scriptures say about the Antichrist is fundamental. The characteristics described there are specific and somewhat intriguing. One of them, for example, is that this figure would have Jewish origins and a certain disrespect for established religions. This is where Jared Kushner's name enters the conversation. Not that I am claiming that he is the Antichrist, but the circumstances surrounding his figure seem to align in a peculiar way with the ancient descriptions. This makes me think, and intrigues me a lot, about how the past seems to resonate in the present. Reflecting more deeply, I realize that prophecies tend to have patterns that are not limited to a single interpretation. Jared Kushner, known for his role in global political and religious spheres, emerges as a figure who bears many overlaps with these descriptions. His stance, neutral but extremely influential on large-scale issues, could be seen as a sign of this figure that the scriptures mention. Of course, I'm not saying there's a premeditated conspiracy here, but some patterns make me wonder if we're witnessing something bigger at work. Analyzing the present through the lens of the past is, for me, a powerful tool, and I often wonder, are these patterns really coincidences? This all leads me to reflect on whether prophecies are truly an accurate prediction of what is to come, or just a mirror of our collective fears. Take, for example, Kushner's role in the Abraham Accords, the attempt to establish permanent peace in the Middle East. It is interesting to think that the Bible mentions a peace that would come as a facade before great events. Is Kushner's movement part of this larger orchestration, or just a genuine attempt to create harmony? These questions keep running around in my mind, because I know there is much more in the shadows of the present that defines the details of the future. Can we see? I've always found the idea that the Antichrist could have an origin linked to the tribe of Dan fascinating. It's a detail that not everyone notices, but it's there, between the lines of the scriptures. The tribe of Dan is not mentioned among the tribes of the 144,000 sealed in Revelation, which seems to me to be an important indication. Could this detail be a clue that God left to warn us? That absence has always made me think there's something special or dark about this particular tribe. Something that should not be ignored. There are those who say that the tribe of Dan was excluded from the sealed ones because from them would come someone destined to oppose the divine plan itself. And to be honest, this idea makes sense when we look at Jewish tradition and its rich mythology. Imagine a people whose destiny is linked to something that transcends generations, something that leads them to the path of opposition. Couldn't Kushner, being of Jewish origin, be in some way connected to this narrative? Of course, this is speculation, but for me, prophecies always have a solid basis in history and culture, and because everything is interconnected, it's hard to ignore the pieces of this puzzle. And here's the part that intrigues me most. If there really is a connection between the tribe of Dan and the Antichrist, what would that mean for the future? I see this as a kind of warning for us to pay attention to the signs. Often, the Antichrist will not be someone who arrives in an explicit and declared way, but rather a figure who gradually gains confidence, who blends in with normality, until, suddenly, the pieces begin to fall into place. As I think about this, I can't help but wonder, are we seeing these signs? Or are we just turning a blind eye to the evidence around us, hoping it's all a coincidence? When I look at Jared Kushner's role in current politics, especially in the context of the Abraham Accords, I can't help but think that he is at the center of something much bigger than just negotiation. The fact that he is one of the main architects of these agreements, which aim to guarantee lasting peace in the Middle East, is intriguing to say the least. He maintains strong connections with leaders of several Arab nations, something that seems almost impossible for most people to achieve. To me, this goes beyond a mere diplomatic game. It almost seems as if it were a fulfillment of something predicted long ago. Peace in the Middle East has always been a kind of holy grail of international diplomacy, and here we are, witnessing an agreement that many considered unlikely, led by a figure who fits certain prophetic patterns. When I think of the Abraham Accords, I remember the promises of peace that the scriptures speak of, a period of apparent tranquility that would precede great transformations. Kushner, with his ability to establish ties where there was previously only distrust, seems to move like someone who already knows the exact path he should follow. It makes me wonder, is he simply being a brilliant strategist, or is there something more, a kind of hidden purpose behind his actions? For many, the Abraham Accords represent hope. For others, a piece of a prophetic puzzle that, once assembled, will reveal something much more disturbing. I tend to think the truth is somewhere in between. There's no denying that Kushner's involvement is peculiar, especially considering his seemingly apolitical yet powerful stance. He acts as an intermediary, someone who moves between cultures and interests as easily as others change their opinions. If it is really part of a larger plan, be it prophetic or geopolitical, this is something that only time can show us. But we can't help but wonder what's next. And how will these movements influence the course of upcoming events? Now that you've seen how the details of our era, prophecies, and current events may be more connected than we realize, the question is, what do we do with this knowledge? The role of Jared Kushner, the Abraham Accords, and the possible clues that emerge between the lines of biblical scripture are much more than simple coincidences. They are warnings, signs for those who are willing to see. Are we prepared to interpret these signs and make the necessary decisions? Or will we continue to ignore what's right in front of us, hoping it's all just a chance? The truth is that prophecies have always been written not just to inform us, but to prepare us. And preparation begins with understanding, with a critical look at who we are and where we are going. Are we ready to accept that the future may not be as promising as we would like to believe? If you really want to be prepared, you need to start applying what you learned here. Be attentive, seek more knowledge, and above all, don't accept the first version of the facts that is presented to you. Always ask yourself, what is the role of the figures we are seeing gain prominence now? What is the true intention behind the agreements, the words, the gestures? I want you to walk away from this video with something more than just a thought. I want you to be motivated to act, to seek more, to delve deeper into the details that most people prefer to ignore. If what we talked about here moved you, then this is the first step to changing the way you see the world. Subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and always be prepared for more revelations about what current times have in store for us. There is much more to discuss, and together we can try to understand what is actually happening and what is to come.